Right? If you can hear me, clap one time. If you feel blessed and highly favored, clap two times. If you're full, clap three times. If you're ready to go home, the door is right there. We're gonna wait on Pastor. Here to get some of his black history juice. Ready? All right. So I am Reverend Ryan Akers. I'm here to introduce our speaker. I'm gonna read a portion of the Bible because it was sent to me, and I feel like it's so rich that I don't want you to miss out. But I'm gonna give you a personal introduction from what I've seen in the community. Dr. Karlos is Regents Associate Professor of African and African American Studies at the University of Oklahoma, with affiliate appointments in the OU History Department and the Schumann Center for Judaic and Israel Studies. Dr. Hill is author of 3 books: Beyond the Rope, The Impact of Lynching on Black Culture and Memory, The Murder of Emmett Till, A Graphic History, and the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, Photographic History. He is also a co-editor of Behold the Walls, written by Claire Luper, a vital historical account documenting the life, activism, and visionary leadership of the pioneering civil rights organizer who led the 1958 Katz drugstore sit-in in Oklahoma City. His book on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre won the 2022 Lynch McIntosh Award for Excellence, the 2022 Joan Kerr Patterson Book Award from the Western Historical Association, and the 2022 Choice of Outstanding Academic Title from the American Library Association. In 2023, award-winning filmmaker Ryan Coogler, best known for the Black Panther, Creed, and Sinners, sought Dr. Hill's expertise as a historical consultant for Sinners, his critically acclaimed period horror film set in 1932 in Jim Crow, Mississippi. The film, which premiered in April 2025, earned 7 Golden Globe nominations, including Best Picture, and was named Best Film of 2025 by the African American Film Critics Association. Dr. Hill's consultation ensured the film's authentic portrayal of racial violence, Jim Crow economics, and Black resistance in the Depression era South, demonstrating how rigorous historical scholarship can powerfully inform popular culture and reach global audiences. Dr. Hill founded the Tulsa Race Massacre Oklahoma Teachers Institute and the Claire Luper's Teachers Institute to support teaching the histories of racial violence and civil rights resistance to thousands of middle school and high school students. He serves on the boards of the Claire Luper Legacy Committee, Widen the Circle, and the Board of Scholars for Facing History and Ourselves. He also collaborates with AG Remembrance, there you go, initiative as the Theodore Hughes, I'm skipping that word, in historical memory and genocide education. He writes a column titled Bearing Witness for the World Literature Today, featuring stories and analysis of community activists and historical narratives of racial justice across the globe. If you want to copy this bio, I will gladly send it to you. But from a personal level, so how I was introduced to Dr. Hill, I'm on the board of the Julius Jones Institute. Most of you know who Julius Jones is. And so we have a cohort. And the cohort is a way to interact with people who want to make a change. You're learning things like how to write a law, how to write policy, how to introduce it to down at the Capitol. And I watched him work. He for those of you who don't know, I am an alpha. But we have a community center. And our goal with that community center is to always bring things that people are afraid to bring in other communities. And so something like this, people are always afraid to bring it because of the backlash. And so when the Julius Jones Institute reached out and said, hey, we need somewhere to meet, we're trying to do this. We're all for it. But nobody would stay and sit. So I went and sat and watched this brother work with these people and train their minds and just pull things out of their minds they wouldn't see before. And it was impressive. And then you do your research, and it's even more impressive. Then you talk to people in your inner circles, and you find out that you're interlinked with different people, and you're all connected. And I was like, man, that's impressive. And I would see him at different events, and I would see him at the Capitol. We did a day at the Capitol, and really impressive. We never really just got to talk until Lady J said, hey, does anybody know Dr. Karlos Hill? I was like, I kind of know him. I got to connect. We need him. And he was not reluctant to step into the forefront. Despite his busy schedule. Yes. We've already told him what we want to talk about. But he's a free man. So the thing is, though, soak it all in. Because you never know what you're going to get out of it. You never know what nugget's going to come out from it. You heard the bio, if you were listening. He's been around people that none of us feel like we probably ever be around, except for when we turn on TV. He's seen things. He's put in the work, the research that some of us won't even make the effort to do unless we're scrolling on the internet. So I would just like for you, and Lady J would like for you to just soak this all in and listen to him and hear his story. Ask the questions that you need to ask. Hey, we got this mic on.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother Brian. Man, that's an amazing introduction. There we go. That's an amazing introduction. Amazing introduction. Thank you, dear brother. My grandmother, who I'm going to talk about, would say, boy, he made you sound like somebody. You must be somebody. And so I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate Lady J for thinking of me, for Pastor Jemison for allowing me to speak with you during your Black History Month program. This is the 100th month, or excuse me, the 100th year of celebrating Black History or Negro History Week, which became Black History Month. So 100 years of us remembering our histories. And so thank you for inviting me during this sacred time for us, our people, to remember whose shoulders we are standing on. And that is going to be my message for today, the shoulders that I am standing on, the shoulders that we are standing on. The reason why we are showing up here as we are is because of others, Ubuntu. And so I want to say a little bit more about who I am. Brother Brian gave such a wonderful introduction, a generous introduction. And I want to add a little more meat to it so that you know who I am and why I'm saying what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And so I am Dr. Karlos Hill. I am a Regents Professor at the University of Oklahoma for African-American History in the Clara Luper. I love to say this, in the Clara Luper Department of African and African-American History. A trailblazer, Clara Luper. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It was only right for our department to name ourselves in honor of her because she was one of the first Black students, because she is a legendary teacher in Oklahoma City who paved the way for not just Black students at University of Oklahoma, but Black students, right, throughout Oklahoma City. It only made sense if we were trying to inspire the youth to understand the best of who they were. We would lean on and we would let Clara Luper, her life, her legacy, her message guide us as a department. So it was a tremendous honor for me to be the first chair, the founding chair of the Clara Luper Department, honoring her sacred contributions and how she has allowed, literally allowed us at the University of Oklahoma, right, to do the work that I have called a living now, a Black Studies professor. So it's really an honor that was able to become the first chair of that department. I came to Oklahoma in 2016, and I came to join the Clara Luper department because prior to being in Oklahoma, I was in Texas teaching in a history department, in a department that really didn't care about the histories of Black people, or certainly I couldn't get resources, right, to do that work. And so I decided to come to the University of Oklahoma and teach Black studies here. And I had no idea how coming here and being in spaces, sacred spaces like this with Black community, that it would change how I do Black history, how I talk about Black history. I was remade as a Black studies historian because I was in Oklahoma, not as a result of me moving, but because I was here in Oklahoma engaged with the histories of the state, the Black histories of the state, that I was remade. If I were to point to the two places that transformed me the most, it would be Tulsa, Greenwood, Vernon AME, and it would be Oklahoma City, Clara Luper, the Clara Luper Legacy Committee, and certainly Marilyn Luper, who I consider a mentor. I say that I was remade as a Black Studies historian because the work, the history of Greenwood, how Greenwood rebuilt itself, and how the community today stands on the shoulders of those survivors who many people disregarded, many people discounted, especially their stories of what happened to them. But nonetheless, Greenwood rebuilt itself. And 20 years after the massacre, right, Greenwood was bigger, more populous, right, than it had been before the devastation. And so learning that history, that what I would call the felt history of the race massacre from the victims, from the survivors, and from the descendants, positioned me to tell the felt history. The felt history. What made people in that community sad? What made them empowered by that history? What inspired them about that history? They help me to understand that story. They have positioned me to bear witness to that story. Not just in the interest of Dr. Hill knowing it, but Dr. Hill bearing witness to it so that other people care about it. And so it's been my great honor and privilege to bear witness to the life, the legacy of victim survivors and descendants of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. That work, more than anything, has made Oklahoma home to me because I see my life's work, right, is bearing witness from here until I pass to that history in the interest of justice, healing justice for that community, and for a healing relationship between Greenwood and the city of Tulsa that still, with buried 221 bodies pulled out of the ground since a year ago, there's a lot of healing that has to happen in that community. And so we often talk about the survivors, the remaining survivors of the massacre. And we've had at least two of them pass in the last 2 years. But I often say to people, we often forget about perhaps the most important survivor, Greenwood. Yeah. Greenwood was a survivor of the massacre, and because Greenwood survived through its survivors, rebuilding, and even when they didn't know another attack would occur, we have that community that still stands as a symbol of excellence. And so for me, my work is to bear witness to that. Right? Greenwood isn't something that was in the past. Greenwood today is still a symbol of excellence. That's why it was destroyed. That's why it was reborn. It was a symbol of excellence. And so My story as a Black Studies historian can't be told without Oklahoma, can't be told without Greenwood, and how my service to those elders, those victims, those survivors, and those descendants have cemented me spiritually to serving them. Right? I spend so much time trying to figure out how I can better serve, right, that community, tell that story more compassionately so that others will have a deeper sense of compassion and do something about how that history shows up today in the form of inequality, in the form of educational disparity, in the form of police brutality, how the history of racial violence, the Tulsa Race Massacre being the most spectacular manifestation of that violence, how we need to heal in relationship to that. That is my message. That is my purpose, right? For seeing in Oklahoma as a kind of spiritual home and a place that I want to be in service to. That all has happened in the last 10 years. I would say more closer to home, Oklahoma City. I've had the privilege of serving on the Clara Luper Legacy Committee since 2017, 2018. And that occurred because I had the crazy idea at the time to try to name our department in honor of Clara Luper. And so in doing that, I had to obviously talk to the family. And in talking to Marilyn Luper, who was sort of the representative of the family, about my motivations for she agreed that it would be a good use of her mother's life and legacy. And so, because I was so honored by her saying yes, I said to her, Marilyn, we don't have any money that we can give you. We don't even have a gift we can give you. I was ashamed, y'all. I didn't have anything that I could give this woman that I thought would be of value to her at that time. And so what I said to her is, Marilyn, what I can do, or what I promise you that I will do, is I will try to work hard to stimulate knowledge, right, research, teaching on Clara Luper's life and legacy. I will spend my time on the legacy committee trying to figure out with you and the committee how we can spread not only her life's history, and her legacy, but to share her philosophy, right? What made her special and great as an educator, as an activist? What differentiated her for those icons that we talk about often? Dr. King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer. She sits right alongside of them. And she sits alongside of them not as a duplicate, she sits alongside of them contributing a real distinctive philosophy about how you mobilize community, right, and how you create change. We're going to stimulate education, research, and teaching around that. And so that work since 2017, 2018, again, has cemented me to community, to this place as a home for me, because the work that I'm trying to do to bear witness to Clara Luper's life, legacy, and impact, not just in Oklahoma City, but across the world. She has had that kind of impact, but she hasn't had her flowers. Not all of them. And so my work is to be in service of that life and legacy because it has been so profound. And I want to talk about that in just a minute. And so I say all that to say that I have come to understand my role and goal as a Black Studies historian in the Clara Luper Department of African and African American Studies as one to bear witness, to bear witness to victims, survivors, and descendants of America's Black Holocaust, which includes lynching and slavery and race massacres and civil rights violence, to bear witness to that in the interest of healing justice. Because I have worked so closely with activists like Marilyn Looper, Christy Williams in Tulsa, trying to fight for healing justice, it has shaped how I think about what I do, not just in activist circles or in the classroom. It's affected how I try to live my life. I try to live my life having healing relationships to past, present, and future. Healing relationships to past, present, and future. And so my 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 mission and my message is healing history. Healing history because of the Tulsa Race Massacre, the work there, and as well the work with the Legacy Committee. Healing history is my mission and message, and it's very simple. History, the most divisive histories that we have in our country, which all involve Black people or people of color, those most difficult and traumatic histories for us, we can heal in relationship to them. If we're willing to have a healing relationship, if we're willing to speak honestly about them, and in speaking honestly, vulnerably about them, if we're willing to position ourselves to be compassionate for stories that are not our own, and to understand them compassionately, change can happen, healing can occur, and we certainly need it if justice, healing justice, is going to happen. And so much of what I'm saying to you, I could not say to you without having spent time with elders in Greenwood on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission. I could not be saying this to you had I not spent hours sitting with the Legacy Committee talking about Mother Looper and her contributions, right, to the city and to the world. I wouldn't be positioned. So I stand on their shoulders, bearing witness to the felt issues that I have learned from them. This is not my original research. This is the oral history of these movements that I'm sharing with you that I've learned right from community and what I bear witness to. And so that is what has anchored me as a Black Studies professor, and that is what will continue to anchor me as a Black man living in Oklahoma, and a Black man who's come to not only live in Oklahoma, but love its Black history. Oklahoma has the greatest Black history I think there is. And what state could you say that agrees? I want to get so close to y'all. What state could you name where Greenwood's symbol of Black excellence and wealth existed? 50 all Black towns existed. The mother of the civil rights movement in Oklahoma and the mother of the sit-in movement, all that happened in the space of Oklahoma in 80 years. Where did they do that? Oklahoma is essential in its Black history, and I've come to feel a deep honor to tell those stories, to bear witness to those stories. And so bearing witness, healing history, healing justice is my message, is my mission. I can only say that because I have been here. I've also lived in other places. I'm from the Louisiana Delta and the Mississippi Delta. So when I heard there was soul food, my eyes lit up. I got looking around, what's going on? Because I grew up in a Black culture where soul food emerged, where soul food originated, right? In the Delta, right? The most southern place on earth, as well as the blackest place. I hate to say it like that, on earth, right? I learned that from growing up in the Delta. And so what I want to just briefly talk about is sort of how did I become this Black Studies professor who bears witness and healing justice and all of that? Where did that come from? Because it didn't just come from me. I am standing on the shoulders of ancestors, elders, and parents, right? I couldn't be here in front of you without their sacrifices and without their guidance of me. And so for me, when I think about why I'm here, I think of my maternal line. I think of the women who shaped and molded me. And I think of them because I spent the most time with them. I got the most guidance and tutoring from them. And ultimately, it's them who, when I think about, I am in service to. And so when I think about my journey, I have to mention Annie Pilot. Annie Pilot is my great great grandmother. She was an enslaved woman who grew up in the Alabama Black Belt. But after slavery, she was 15 years old. She moved to Louisiana, to the Louisiana Delta, and she raised my great grandmother, Mattie Pilot, in Mer Rouge, Louisiana, in the Bon Idee, because in Northeast Louisiana, along the Mississippi River, that's French country. And so there are tons of French place names throughout the Louisiana and Mississippi Delta. I grew up in Mer Rouge, if you want to say it in French. Um, we learned French in Louisiana because of that colonial heritage. But I grew up in Mer Rouge, Red Sea. That's what it means in French, Red Sea. I grew up in Mer Rouge, which in the era of slavery was filled with cotton plantations as far as your eye could see in every direction. And so I grew up in the shadows of the plantation economy that Annie Pilot worked in, that Mattie Pilot, her daughter, worked in. And those two women never received a formal education. I doubt whether they could read because of what I know about the Jim Crow education system in Louisiana and how that education system was dictated by the sharecropping schedule, by the plantation economy. And so I know she received a very minimal formal education. But nonetheless, she raised 10 children to be successful. She raised, Mattie Pilot, my great grandmother, gave birth to Alcine Too Sweet Winston, the grandmother that I referenced at the beginning, who would say, "You sound like somebody." Alcine Too Sweet Winston, my grandmother, also someone who was born in the throes of Jim Crow, received only a third grade education, spent her whole life working as a domestic, right? At 75 years old, I can remember so vividly as a 9-year-old walking with her, because she didn't have a car at the time, walking with her to churches that she would clean for, that she was a domestic for at 75 years old. She worked her whole life hard, and I was there to witness the last 17 years of that. And so my grandmother, Alcine Too Sweet Winston, she was called Too Sweet because she lived with great Ubuntu. How many of you are familiar? I love talking about Ubuntu. How many of you are familiar with Ubuntu, what that means? It's a South African phrase that means I am because we are. And so it's all about the kind of interconnection and interdependence that we have as human beings on each other. But it also means when you say in South Africa someone has great Ubuntu, they are someone who has great generosity, someone who is kind, someone who is deeply compassionate. And so my grandmother, Alcine Too Sweet Winston, was kind and generous to a fault, not just for her family, for the whole community. And I witnessed that as a child, how this woman who had nothing gave everything that she had to her family and her community, everything that she had. We don't even know how she was able to give, but she did. And so she taught me things about Black people and Black culture. But more than anything, she taught me to love Black people and to have a deep love for the Black community because she loved it so and she served it so. Even though she had very little formal education, very little wealth, she was known as Too Sweet because she gave her all to. And so she, more than anything, I stand on her back because my mother, Easter Hill, broke that cycle, right, of being marginally educated by being the first truly woman in her family and her sisters to go to college. To go to college at Grambling State University, historically Black college and university in Louisiana, breaking the cycle that has started with slavery. And so my mother, who was taught the difficult lessons of the Jim Crow era herself, she emerges, um, gets college educated, and becomes a teacher. And as a teacher, she plants a seed in me that education will be your pathway. Education will guide your steps. Focus on studying, 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 and studying some more. And I remember as a child hating that. Like, I don't want to study. I want to play basketball. I was a basketball player. I could play basketball, y'all. Now, don't look, I know I look a little short, but I was a big point guard. My dad was a basketball coach, so I had to be a being point guard at my size, right? I wanted to play basketball. I didn't want to study. But my mother, given her lineage and given what she had overcome and what she had seen in her own life, the transformation that can happen through education, she made me study when I didn't want to. And because of that, she positioned me to be where I am today. But even in that moment, she positioned me because she had prepared me to study and to value education, that when I'm 16 years old, I am able to enroll in the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Art, this college preparatory school in Louisiana for the most gifted students in Louisiana. I'm able to go there because she positioned me, given our lineage. And so my mother, as well as her mother and the whole line, deserves credit for how I am showing up here today. It's not just me, right? Anything significant we do in our lives or in our community happen because of other people, not just because of us. And so I can tell you my journey could only happen because of Maddie Pilot, Annie Pilot, Alcine Too Sweet Winston, Easter Hill, and a whole line of Limba women that I haven't mentioned. And the Limba people of Sierra Leone, which my great grandmother Annie Pilot hails from. And so I stand on their shoulders, right? And I bear witness to that in these settings to make sure, right, to make sure that we're clear that I stand on their shoulders and I could be here without them. We stand, though, and I will try to pull this in. We stand the city of Oklahoma City, the Black community, Northeast Side, and a whole bunch of schools across the metro stand on the shoulders of Clara Luper. And Clara Luper is many things to many people, but it cannot be disputed that Clara Luper was a master teacher. And as a master teacher, not just an activist, she impacted and she shaped for decades the lives of Black children, right? And through them, the Black community. I have come to know deeply her impact again from being on the Clara Luper Legacy Committee for the last almost 10 years now. And for me, and this is what I would most want to bear witness to today, especially during Black History Month, especially this month, February, I would want to bear witness to what made Clara Luper distinctive. Like we want to talk about her in the context of civil rights icons like Dr. King, but why should we talk about her in that way? What is the basis of that? What made her distinctive? What I say what made Clara Luper distinctive was her notion of activism and radical love, right? She believed radical love, loving people who didn't love you, loving your enemies, was the path towards transforming not just laws, unjust laws, but it was the secret antidote of transforming human relationships, changing society, ending racism. Like she believed that love, radical love, right, through nonviolence was the way to change the world. And she taught her students this for generations. She didn't just talk to them, tell them that they should think these things. You should love your enemies, right? She didn't do that. She showed them how to love their enemies. She helped them enact it and then create it in the world. She helped them visualize, imagine it, enact it, and in doing so, create that same thing in the world. And so what I'm talking about is in February of 1957, Clara Luper wrote and had her students perform a play, Brother President. How many of y'all have heard of Brother President play? Brother President. You're going to hear more about it in the upcoming weeks. Brother President is a play all about the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955-56. And that 381-day bus boycott that transformed interstate travel, interstate busing in the country, that inspired Mother Luper. That commitment, that 381-day boycott, the commitment that the Black community showed and how it transformed the law, that inspired her to write a play about nonviolence and how nonviolence rooted in radical love could transform the world. And so through the play Brother President, she hoped that she could not only teach the students this, but through them performing roles in Brother President, enacting the Montgomery bus boycott, she could help them to understand and feel, right? Feel these ideas, teach them through enacting it. And so there's so much to say about Brother President, but safe to say, Brother President helped position their 13 original senators to understand what it meant to take a seat, like Rosa Parks took a seat. They knew the violence that they would face. They knew the preparation that they needed to have to sit and be subjected to racism and racial epithets that would come from white white segregationists. And so through that play, performing that play beginning in February of 1957, traveling to New York City, as Marilyn Luther likes to say, traveling the northern route to New York City to perform Brother President, coming back the southern route to Oklahoma City after performing it to hundreds in Harlem and Manhattan. Yes, sir. Okay. Absolutely. See, I told you if I start talking, I would start talking. But I really wanna just let me just end though, because I wanna say more about Mother Luther. But I just want to get to the point. Um, if Mother Luther were here and she was trying to mentor and to inspire the young people, I know that she would say to them what she's maybe said to students of hers who are here is that you are diamonds, right? Clara Luther believed not just students, but people. And she really believed Black children needed to hear this message that you are diamonds. Her philosophy of activism and education revolved around her belief that students were diamonds. And what that truly means for her is students had greatness inside of them that they didn't even know. And it took a teacher who cared enough about them, would want to spend time with them to polish them like you would a diamond so their greatness and brilliance could show for all. She believed students were diamonds and they had so much greatness in them that she took 13 students in Cash Drugstore and ignited a sit-in movement that touched not just Oklahoma City, but spread to the rest of the country. That started here because of how she valued and she served students. And for me as an educator, I can't think of a more empowering vision for how you engage with students than Mother Luther. And so for so many reasons, we stand on her shoulders. I stand on her shoulders as a Black Studies historian who's given me deep guidance on how to train and educate and inspire our young people. I could say more, y'all. I really want to, but I really want to create some space for questions and some reflection. But it's been an honor and a privilege. And again, thank you, Pastor Jemison, Lady J, for inviting me. And any questions, I'm not afraid to answer. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know anything. I'm not originally from Oklahoma, so I didn't know anything about the history of Tulsa. So I went down there, and I'm pretty upset about that the history actually happened. Because they don't talk about it. I'm from the West Coast, never heard anything about it. Who got jazz bands, never heard anything about that. Never knew about all this. So I went down there to the museum. Yeah. My question, there, that part of they have, they show the stuff falling from the sky. I was wondering.
Yes, for sure. Like when we think about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre and how a 40 block area was destroyed in less than 18 hours, that can't happen without the complicity of law enforcement and fire, right? Emergency services. It can't happen without some sort of coordination or lack thereof. And so we know that the city of Tulsa did not try to prevent homes and business from being burned, from being attacked. We know that they did not stop the lawless violence that overtook Greenwood. Greenwood defended itself. That's one of the part of the felt history of Greenwood, is that they defended themselves. And if you know a little bit about the lore, Peg Taylor was fighting on Standpipe Hill, trying to fight back the mob, protecting black churches that was in the vicinity of. And so there's a proud history of fighting back, but it was based upon the lack of the city, right, and the lack of the National Guard, the state guards they called them, to intervene to stop the escalation of violence, stop the escalation of the destruction. They simply allowed it to happen, and then because I've studied this, there are photographs of the police watching, right, fires being set and buildings being, or excuse me, homes being looted. And so you're absolutely right to point your finger there. But in terms of prior to the massacre, was there a conspiracy, a governmental conspiracy? That's something that historians haven't been able to document or prove. But we do know that there was a deep animosity towards Greenwood and its success. Black Wall Street was truly a kind of Black Wall Street, right? There were 6 millionaires, right? Probably the wealthiest of them was J.B. Stratford. One of the real privileges that I have is working with some of those descendants. I'm working with the Stratford family to publish J.B. Stratford's memoir. J.B. Stratford, along with O.W. Gurley, is known as the sort of founding figures of Greenwood. But I would say even more so Stratford, because he was the visionary for sort of how they could share resources and build a community. And so, yes, to answer your question, there was governmental complicity. It's been hard to prove, a conspiracy beforehand. But you're right to be thinking that, and that's what activists today, like Christy Williams, have pushed the city to provide reparations and restitutions because of their involvement in the escalation of violence.
Do you ever think they'll ever recommend a reparation for Black?
Not reparations and restitution that is equal to the suffering, equal to the devastation. I don't have tremendous hope for that. But what I have had hope in recently is because of the Beyond Apology movement that began in Tulsa in 2023. They had a set of community conversations that created an agenda, a restitution agenda, a community reparations program. And I'm glad to say after 2 years of that movement, pushing the city, holding conversations with the city and the community, in June of 2025, Monroe Nichols, who's the new mayor, newish mayor, who's been in office now for about a little more than a year, he, worked with Beyond Apology to create a $105 million restitution package that includes, $25 million for cultural remembrance, $60 million for economic development, and then another $40 million in terms of endowment money for the community that will be held in a trust. And so that is where we are today. That is nowhere near what Greenwood is owed, what Greenwood deserves. But I have hope because of these recent developments that more justice, and particularly as it relates to the unmarked graves, that this can be a basis for continuing into the future. That really important work, probably the most devastating memory that I can talk about in terms of the race massacre is talking to descendants who say that they feel a deep sense of trepidation walking through Greenwood because they don't know if they're stepping on the graves, unmarked graves of ancestors. And so this is a haunting memory for Black people. Going to the ballpark near Greenwood or in Greenwood feels eerie because there is good evidence to believe that there are bodies that were buried underneath on top of that baseball stadium. And so those are the things that I talk about, that I'm talking about when we're talking about how do we heal. Those other things are ongoing that are causing trauma right here, right now. And without substantial, sufficient repair, they will remain haunting traumas. And so bearing witness to that, getting people to care about that, positioning students and the public to care about that is my sort of sacred work as a Black Studies historian. I truly believe that through dialogue, deep listening, that we can transform ourselves and each other, and in doing so, create change. And so all of that, again, has really cemented me, rooted me here in Oklahoma, and I see it as my life's work to do the work of healing justice in these communities.
Thank you, sir.
So, if you've been enriched tonight, I just want you to keep clapping. I'm not gonna talk too long here. I heard the murmur earlier, but being enriched, my dad used to say, you'll never stop learning until you die. But what you teach lives on forever. Right. Right. Just imagine all the dirt that's there on the ball field that they had to bring in to try to hide it. So tonight, you go talk to your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, remind them, like our Black history says, who we are, where we came from, and then pray. Yeah. The Lord gives them the courage and the strength to stand up just like our ancestors did. The ones that actually took that courage to fight. But we're gonna pray out because we've had courage. Oh, well, Dr. Jimson will take it. Thank you very much, Brian. Give Dr. Hill another hand for me, please.